to chapter 1 of the Principles of Fitness and Wellness. So, this is diving directly into introductory material for any realm, really, more specifically regarding, how health, wellness, fitness all kind of come together, talking about what are the five basically principles of health and fitness, and on top of that, the 7 dimensions of wellness that we'll hit on so that we can kind of start opening up our minds to other aspects that are simply the groundwork to everything that you're going to know about exercise and fitness. So let's move right through. There are a lot of different um, styles, or not styles, but more a lot of like introductory material, but it's really important because the graphs and the images that you're going to see in here are going to be really important for the basic understanding of just wellness in general. So let's talk about what we got. Okay. 3 basic factors for health and longevity include the factors of genetics, our environment or the environment in general, and then our behaviors, our choices, what we decide that we're going to do. So how can we control anything? Well, it's going to be, um, the environment and our behaviors are the controllable factors. Genetics, unfortunately, if you're born into some bad genetics, all jokes aside, just in general, if you're born into that non-athletic based genetics, it may not be in your cards that you're going to be the highest performer of elite fitness, but in turn, you never know. So genetics can always play out in a different manner. So what are we looking at here? So right now we're in the 21st century. Previous century, we were talking about the predominant causes were infectious disease, where, something as simple as the common cold or the flu really was prevalent in terms of, destroying people's lives. All right. Now we've moved from infectious disease, okay, and living to approximately 45 to 50 years old. 47 years was the life expectancy. So you shifted from this infectious disease principle to now chronic diseases, which are basically overloading the system with something negative, right? So things that are going to last long term. All right. So if you look at what we were just talking about, influenza, pneumonia, those were like the 2 main, infectious diseases. Talking about tuberculosis as well, that equated to a large number that we had. One of the things that you want to see here now, looking at these trends, right? Looking at the trends, look at the big orange. All other causes, 53%. Okay, let's pay attention to that as it starts to diminish itself a little bit more. 13% was related to cardiovascular disease, so pretty low. Now we're talking in the 1900s. 13% was due to, like we said, basically 25%, 13 plus 12. Influenza, pneumonia plus tuberculosis, infectious disease, 25% total. 5% was related to accidents, and a very small 4% for cancer. 4% for cancer, not very prevalent. And then you start to see a shift into the 20s and into the 20s and then into the 40s, where all other causes start to diminish while cardiovascular disease starts to come up. Okay? Other aspects kind of stay the same, although things like influenza and pneumonia start to diminish. Well, medications that start to help with that, vaccines for that purpose. All right. But again, look at that shift in the 60s up to cardiovascular disease is starting to blow through the roof. All right. Changes in food quality, TV dinners, less activity, working more. All right, there's a lot of aspects that come into play that changed our cardiovascular disease viewpoint. And you can see all their causes starts to go down. And then as you start progressing toward the 2010 mark, all right, you start seeing that as we get closer to where we're at, 30% was cardiovascular disease. That still holds true today. But look at the blow up from 1900 to 2010 in cancer, right? 4% in 1900 to 23%. So a very large jump in that 100-year period. So very scary that we've, basically almost gone 5 to 600% more in that realm, and that just shows you where we're at in terms of our health. So, what do we want to say? Big 5 factors: tobacco smoking, high blood pressure, overweight and obesity, physical inactivity, high blood glucose. All right, those are all risk factors for lifestyle choices. You can choose whether you want to smoke or not. Now, smoking is kind of one of those things where you don't necessarily see it, so you don't really know what the prevalence of it is anymore, because you got to figure, I mean, well, at least when I was growing up, you could smoke on a plane, you could smoke in malls, you could smoke in some schools if it was that point in time. So you can see where it was kind of a, it wasn't really a major factor, but we don't see it anymore. We don't see the fact that people are, we do see it, but we don't see it. People have to stand outside and smoke. They have designated smoking areas, etc. All right. High blood pressure, pretty straightforward. Hypertension, overweight and obesity, that's come a long way. Even with children now more so than anything else. Physical activity, okay, we can change the fact that we can work out or not, or even just move in general. And then that physical activity probably has a pretty good carryover to overweight and obesity. And then high blood glucose probably has another direct correlation to overweight and obese and being obese as well. So these are, again, risk factors for lifestyle choices. So an individual controls most, not all, but most of their vulnerabilities for disease and basically to be able to change their quality of life to the better, or if they decide to make those other choices, for the worse. Okay? So, like it says here, wide-ranging changes in the last century. Yeah, diets that are more processed, more refined carbohydrates, more sugary based, more unhealthy fatty foods, all right, more fast food. We've increasingly become less moving, more stagnant, more sedentary. And with the manner of social interactions, hence I'm making these videos now versus some people being in class with me. That's a big deal too. Social interaction, that's just one way of social interaction. We're talking about other ways as well. No longer is it the rotary telephone and saying, hey, let's meet up. Now it's just, hey, let's get on FaceTime. So it's a little bit different. So now looking at all causes attributable to lifestyle risk factors for both men and women. Again, you can see where smoking still, but this was as of 2013. Maybe something more out there that is a little bit newer. I know that we've seen a shift in obesity, even being a little bit more of a, going and trying to almost outdo cancer and outdo cardiovascular disease as one of the leading causes of death in our country. All right. But smoking is a lifestyle choice that we choose to do. All right. High blood pressure, lifestyle related, because it can be from smoking, it can be from being overweight, it can be from excessive sodium in our diets. So now we're talking about nutritional status. Okay. So how do we look at everything in this manner? We're saying that 53% of our factoring is related to lifestyle. So almost more than half of how we are in terms of our health is related to what we choose to do on a daily basis. 21% is involved with, environment, 16% genetics, 10% healthcare. All right. So again, the one uncontrollable factor is that 16%. So, what are we saying for the most part? Lifestyle and environment. Just take out the healthcare for a little bit. You're looking at almost 75% of your daily life is being affected by what you choose to do and what you expose yourself to in terms of your environment. So I don't really agree 100% with the first bullet here. Advances in technology have eliminated the need for movement and physical exertion in daily life. Don't necessarily agree with that a whole 100%. Okay. I don't think that technology has completely made us the way we are today, but does it have some sort of impact? Of course. Of course. You're putting, robots in to do other things. You're using computers more often. We're using our technology, to kind of go against that movement component. So, but I can't sit here and be like, that is the major reason. There's other factors that also come into play, and one of them is just the choices that you make. Physical inactivity and your negative lifestyle. So we're talking about, threats to your health. If you don't move, it's going to be a threat to your health. It actually hastens the deterioration rate of your body. If you do not move, it makes you deteriorate more. The more stagnant you are, the more deteriorated your body becomes. Okay? You end up with these sitting diseases where, you go from being an office worker to then going straight home and sitting on your recliner, and then now in the advent, way beyond this PowerPoint when it was created, but now we're talking about the advent of, Uber Eats, DoorDash, those types of things. You don't even have to get up now. You don't have to get up from your recliner to go pick the bag up to then bring it back to your recliner and make sure on the way you stop at the refrigerator to get yourself something to drink. I mean, how much easier can it be for you to sit and gain weight? It's just right there. Therefore, all these negative lifestyles can lead to sedentary death syndrome. Lack of movement leads to death. And then hypokinetic diseases, or diseases that relate to low movement, hypokinetic, low movement. All right, so we have to be aware that these obesity rates are growing. I still believe it's within the 37% range, if I'm not mistaken. It may have gone up to, 38%. So what are we saying? About 1 in 3 people, 38% is a little bit higher than that, but roughly 1 in 3 people is considered obese, whereas about 67% of people are considered, obese or overweight. So 2/3 of people. Pretty scary to think that 2 out of 3 people is either overweight or obese, according to our lovely BMI chart. So what do we got to do? Prevent. Think about our good health. Find ways to manipulate our daily lives to make that better for us to avoid premature death. Well, what do we got to think about? Well, understand that the U.S. does not have the highest life expectancy, although they do have a fairly high life expectancy. But if we're a country of sitting ducks, literally, pun included, why is it that we're still living longer? Medication. I mean, really? What other way would it be? We're not the healthiest country. We don't have the best food quality. We don't really live off the land per se, because we do, but it's manipulated in a lot of context. So why? Well, medication. We can clear up health via medication, which still doesn't mean you're healthy or well. Okay? So what are we looking at with life expectancy? Extremely poor health in some groups. Of course, we know that. There's high levels of violence. Well, I mean, you look at the news every other week, something stupid is happening. And I mean that in a manner that it's stupid, but let's not go there. So your violence, your traffic fatalities, people still not wearing seatbelts, people texting, people not paying attention and eating, and, now we have self-driving cars that make their own decisions, and and then suicide rates are still high. Our life expectancy is going to be based upon our physical activity trends, which aren't very high. We also know that with life expectancy, that men typically are roughly about 5 years lower than women, all countries, no matter the level. So what do we got to think about? Well, we need to think about prevention more than cure. Well, be proactive versus reactive. Do your work before versus do your work after something's already happened. Which one sounds better? Okay? And that really becomes the concern there. Well, again, we're not the highest, but we're not the lowest. Japan still holding strong. 82 years of age for men and 89 years of age for women. So, but you can see the lighter color is the women, and you can see that they are the only one that's relatively close would be us, 79 and 81. Everybody else is 5 or more years different. So, what are we doing wrong? That's really the main question. Already went. So here, if you start noticing as you go by age, we've already, go back a little bit. We looked at this chart. All right, this was causes of death. Now we're going to go by age bracket and where does everybody stack up? All right. Overall, 24%, all the way to the right, 24% for cardiovascular disease for everybody is the highest, 23% for cancer, and then the rest. But where are we at? Well, look what happens at the age of 25 to 34. We see a big dip in accidents. Okay. Well, excuse me. No. I'm looking at the wrong color. In suicide, we see a big dip after the age of 34. Now, basically the orange is your accidents, and you can see that it picks up at 15 to 34 years old, then starts to diminish, and then really diminishes greatly at the age of 45. Okay, and you can see that as you start getting to the point of cardiovascular disease, that's not going to be that's an onset, that's a chronic. That's going to be onset later in life, so that's why at age 35, it's still at 15%. That's really high. That shows you how inactive and how unhealthy we become if we're dying that soon of heart disease or strokes. All right, and then you can see the differences there, age 45 to 55 to 65. But you can see that cancer becomes one of the leading causes for those 45 to 64. All right, just scary things to see here. Scary things to see. So, again, diseases of cardiovascular system are coronary heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. Now, remember, coronary heart disease, talking about the coronary arteries becoming blocked and causing problems with the heart. Heart attacks are those areas that are the areas that get shut off of blood, causing the walls of the heart not to be able to function, causing an attack to that region. And then strokes being basically a heart attack of the brain, where you're going to have a blockage of a certain location of the arteries leading to the brain that can stop, and whatever area becomes deadened is based on where the lack of blood flow is. So strokes can have different impact on different mechanisms depending upon what functioning lobe is affected. There's your cancer. Smoking accounts for 30% of all cancer deaths. It's just faulty lifestyle habits, 30% of all cancer deaths. It's scary. Don't smoke and change your life. I mean, that's 60% of the problem right there. Chronic lower respiratory diseases, things like COPD, emphysema, chronic bronchitis. All right. Those can be onset, but typically those are caused by environmental factors. They can be caused by smoking. Accidents, be aware, avoid distractions, use your seatbelt, don't drink and drive. Pretty straightforward. So, and then the other thing they did list here, medical errors, so malpractice. It's an untracked mortality risk, but it is something that can happen. So it doesn't have a high percent, but understand that there are numbers of people who are dying because of a bad practice or bad procedure within their medical advice. So we do see an inverse relationship between physical activity and premature mortality. By that, we mean that as inverse, meaning they go in opposite directions. So as physical activity goes down, premature mortality goes up, and vice versa. So what do we got to fix? What do we got to get ourselves into that? We got to get into that, as we say, dose response. Well, where do you see that? Medicine. All right. There is a dose response relationship correlation. The higher the dose, the better the response. To an extent, just like medication, the proper dose leads to the proper response. Anything higher or anything too high and anything low of that dose response will cause adverse effects as well. So again, too much exercise, too much physical activity can actually be the starting mechanism for disrupting, as well. You can actually have problems with too much of something. So what are the current recommendations? It's still 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity each week, or in conjunction with 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise or physical activity per week. So we have what's called the Exercise is Medicine Initiative, which is a ACSM recommendation for, like it says here, goals of improving health and wellness through exercise prescriptions. And you see that a lot. I know that we have a few campuses that where I work at that have this exercise medicine initiative where you're trying to get more participation through better exercise protocols. But again, we still look at this whole aspect here of, all causes with low, on the left side with men and on the right side with women. If you look at the far left, all causes, the far right, low fitness, you see you have the highest percentage of death rates. All right. The higher the fitness category, you can see that everything is just naturally lower. Pretty straightforward. Even with moderate, at least you're getting some benefit, but low, forget it. So with our comprehensive fitness programs, regular exercise does everything for us. Muscle, bone, and joint health. It actually helps us mentally as well. Mood, cognition, creativity, and then memory function. Health benefits. We actually start looking better and we start feeling better and our quality of life improves. All right? That's key. A lot of people, when they start losing weight, start feeling that effect of, I'm starting to look better, start feeling happier, and all they want to do is keep continuing on because they feel like they're making those solid improvements. And then, like said previously, cognitive health, hopefully staving off dementia and Alzheimer's later on in life, although not guaranteed, so all of that, just keeping your brain active is very, very appropriate, and that you can get that through exercise. So the problem here, we got the sitting disease that we kind of referred to earlier. We sit for way too many hours. I told you it was sitting at your job, then coming home and sitting at home and not getting up and doing what you need. Getting that 5 times a week for at least 30 minutes movement, physical activity based. All right. It's not normal for our bodies to want to sit stagnant. I have a hard time sitting at my desk for too long of a prolonged period of time. And it starts wearing on me. I'm like, I just need to get up and move. But there are times where I have to be here because maybe I'm doing a video recording like this, or I have to teach in an online environment in a lecture. So it becomes challenging and I have to be able to get up every so often. So got to be aware of that. Therefore, we lead to increased cancer risk, higher odds of disability. You have changes in your biological processes, hormonal imbalances. You're just not using your body the way it's supposed to be. So all we do is we keep we have to find ways to give more opportunity for physical activity. Break it up into increments. Like it says here, take intermittent 5-minute breaks for every half an hour of uninterrupted sitting. That's key, just to get something going. So here, what we look at is what we call NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, versus exercise. Take each of these people and look at what they do. The bottom person is going to burn 1,000 calories from exercise and NEAT. Well, here's why. In comparison to the person who does work out, if you notice them, they get 250 calories of exercise. But what are they doing? They're sitting, they're driving, they're sitting, they're sitting, they're driving, they're sitting, they're sitting, they're sitting. But they do have exercise, but that's still not enough. This person, the second person, burns 350 calories from exercise and NEAT, non-exercise. So it's still activity, but it's non-exercise based. So they went for a walk. They went to the water fountain. They went and I don't know what that is, if that's a cigarette smoke or not. They went for a smoke break and then they walked again. They sat, and they sat for 4 times. Got some exercise in. The person who does 700 calories, that's definitely not a smoke break because that's definitely not a healthy. I can't tell what that is though. But anyway, the 700 calorie person, now we're starting to get somewhere. You can see that they have the color changes that are happening. Less blanks, more oranges and blues. And then the 1,000 calorie person, all oranges and one blue. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to exercise the whole day, but we're putting that process in there to be able to get us moving around. Right? So here's where we got to be. We already talked about non-exercise activity. Okay? But what's exercise? What's physical activity? Put it to you this way. Physical activity is just normal body movement. All right. Exercise is a form of physical activity, except the only difference is that it's planned, structured, and repetitive. So you would say exercise is a physical activity, whereas physical activity is not an exercise. So understand that physical activity is just skeletal movement. Exercise is structured and planned. Okay. Physical activity can go from light to vigorous, light being, just walking to and from your car, all right, to moderate to vigorous. There's your differences there. Take it for what it is. Okay? I know you can read those and see that. But vigorous, more so that sport and that exercise, more structure-based. So now let's get into the types of physical activity. You have health-related, skill-related. Health-related are going to be those that have this class is revolved around 5 principles of physical fitness. So cardiorespiratory, muscle strength, muscle endurance, muscle flexibility, and body comp. That's your 5. Now, there can be an additional one that's related to balance because it is health related now, because it can be a factor in getting people hurt. But it is also skill related as well. So health related, ability to perform activities of daily living without undue fatigue, and we're going to enhance them by those 5 aspects. Now, there's 4 listed, but understand muscular fitness is muscle strength and muscle endurance. Skill-related wise, you're talking about fitness components that are going to help with skillful activities and athletic events. But it's not just about athletics. Agility, balance, coordination, reaction time, speed, and power. They are important for general health promotion and wellness, but they're also very important, like we said, for those that are looking to enhance their athletic performance as well. So, motor, skill-related, not health-related, agility, balance, coordination, reaction time, power, and speed. Those are the 6 that we're talking about skill-related. So on a test, you would say that's not health-related, that is skill-related. So what are we looking at? Health fitness standards, all right? So we're looking at criterion reference based. So basically all of this data that's been compiled over years, we're able to do what's called criterion reference. Take your fitness scores that or your fitness values that you've obtained over the years, and you compare them to the normal standards that are out there, criterion reference standards. Okay? So for example, you're working with muscle strength. That's how much weight you can lift one time. Muscle endurance, how much you can lift repetitively, or even just move your body repetitively, like push-ups. Whereas cardiorespiratory endurance is more about your VO2 max, or how much oxygen you can uptake in a specific amount of time. So those are all criterion reference standards. So then we look at physical fitness standards. Like it says here, they're set higher than health fitness standards. Why? Because we're looking at more of an exercise programming base. So what are we looking at too here? So we're looking at the aspect of, if my health fitness standards are normal just to be able to function correctly, can I change a tire without undue fatigue? Can I chop wood? Can I go up and down stairs no problem? Can I go play a game of basketball with people? All right. So the thing you have to understand is, do I want to be more of the health fitness standard based or the physical fitness standard based? Well, if you're just starting off, this is where we want to be. We want to get you to be in some sort of working ability and eventually progress you to the point you can be a little bit more intensified. Right? But just seeing here, activity, lifestyle, and exercise, or active lifestyle and exercise versus just being active, you can see here how much you can make yourself more beneficial to being healthier. Don't really grasp onto this one too crazily, because sometimes I fear government gets involved in things they shouldn't, but that's just my own personal opinion. The physical activity guidelines for Americans, they come up with these standards, but they don't really take into account the professionals within the field. So you're giving these recommendations for everybody to be able to get to a certain level of fitness, but the people that like myself who've been around, who are educated in that realm, and other professionals like myself, and then eventually you all, when you're future professionals, you all should be actively part of this process to be able to guide Americans in the right way. The problem is that I feel like sometimes we're not giving the right recommendations that are needed. And because the government and Health and Human Services, where are they getting this information from? That's the scary part. But here's the activity guidelines for overall health: 150 minutes a week of moderate. Health and fitness is 75 minutes of vigorous. If you look at those intensities, that's a MIVI, MIVI. So here's where it gets interesting. Health, fitness, and weight gain prevention. You're going to need to get up to weight gain prevention, so preventing weight gain, 300 minutes per week. Now we're talking about getting, and then weight regain prevention. Now you're talking about 60 to 90 minutes per day of both moderate and vigorous intensity. So you really got to step it up. If you're trying, if you've lost weight and you want to keep it off, you really got to work to keep it off as well. It's not just take your lumps, get to where you want to be, and then back off. No, you still got to keep moving. So what do? If you're watching this and you got to this point so far, this is one of your assignments that you're going to be based off of. But yeah, what do? We have ways of monitoring our physical activity through things like activity trackers. Step counters are kind of obsolete. Well, not obsolete. They're kind of outdated, but it doesn't mean you still can't get to that 10,000 step number. That's kind of like your goal for the day. But it can't be, again, your end all be all. But if you take 10,000 steps a day, it means you've been pretty actively moving, and that's what we're looking for. So activity trackers can help with that. There's your numbers. 10,000 or higher is considered active or highly active. And then what are we looking at here? This is basically just saying, okay, well, if I walked a mile in this time frame as a male or a female, I'm going to be taking this many steps for every mile that I walk. So for me, I'm 5'10". I'm a guy. So my 20-minute mile or 3 miles an hour, I would be taking about 2,200 steps. If I'm going 18-minute mile, okay, just under 2,100. 16-minute mile, see where we're going. The faster you walk, that means the longer the stride, the quicker the pace. And then lastly, you're starting to get a little bit quicker here. You can see that if I ran, basically getting to, so 12 minutes is a 5 mile an hour pace. That's like a jog. 10-minute is, a 10-minute mile. Now you're talking about 6 miles an hour consistently. You're getting it to under 1,600. And then if I ran a 6-minute mile, all right, which is 10 miles an hour, I would only take 1,000 steps, which is crazy. All right, but just see, like, you're like, oh, well, I went out and ran 3 miles today, and it's like, okay, well, that's only, if you ran an 8-minute mile at my height, it's less than 4,000 steps. So you're like, whoa, that really is interesting, that like why my numbers may not be. So again, just be careful of that step count and it doesn't deceive you. All right. Now, according to physical activity standards, all it's going to do is create, if you're not physically active and you continue to make the population not physically active, it's only going to cost everybody. Why? The U.S. has the highest insurance costs of anybody per capita in the world. All right. As of 2015, you're looking at $3.2 trillion in healthcare costs. That's crazy. Look what it was before. All right, 1.3 trillion in 2000, 600 billion in 1990, 243 billion in 1980, and then you can see that it's 12 billion in 1950. So significantly different, less healthcare costs. We are third highest as of 2015. All right, Norway and Switzerland, although very healthy, have higher healthcare costs. You can see the rest of the countries there, pretty substantial. or substantially lower, excuse me. Now, talking about wellness, all right, we can, just because you're not sick doesn't mean that you're 100% well, but don't stress about that, because there's ways that we have to understand that if one area of wellness is negatively affected, it can compound to other areas of wellness. So we want to try to keep ourselves afloat and keep ourselves being more positive and implementing these higher quality habits that we have in our everyday life. So we have what we call a wellness continuum, where we relate our adequate fitness and wellness together. So just because you work out every day doesn't mean you're 100% well. And why? Because there's 7 dimensions. Physical is only one part of it. Emotional, mental, social, environmental, occupational, and spiritual. There they all are right here. Okay, and by taking all of those and being well in each one of those areas creates a high level of wellness. And there's your continuum. You can see here with adequate fitness, you can take yourself to being totally well and avoid health breakdown. But again, if you get to a certain point where you start getting into the adequate fitness doesn't become adequate anymore, that's where health breakdown occurs, and eventually it leads to medical supervision not being able to help, and you end up dying. So, physical wellness, what is that? Again, the confidence in a person's ability to take care of their health problems. That's more things like physical activity, exercise, sport, recreation. Emotional wellness is understanding your feelings, accepting limitations, and achieving emotional stability. Those two can work hand in hand, as can mental wellness as well. Engaging your mind with the world and others. Okay, lively interaction. Those 3 definitely work hand in hand to themselves. You go to a gym, and you have a pretty communicative job. That'll be on the next slide. You're talking about being physically well on both fronts, which helps you emotionally and mentally. Social wellness, how you can relate to others. Environmental, are you living in a non-toxic environment? Now, all jokes aside, non-toxic, yeah, that really could also mean non-toxic as in like a significant other or something like that, but also non-toxic where you don't have environmental exposures, pollution, like if you lived in Los Angeles, that type of stuff. And then occupational, are you thriving in your job? Are you getting rewarded? And then lastly, spiritual wellness. The key to spiritual wellness is basically having a sense of meaning and direction. It does not mean that you have to be, someone who's Jewish, someone who's Catholic, Christian, Islamic. All right, it doesn't matter what your religion is. It's more about, do you have this balance of meaning and direction and a higher presence? Okay. Some people do that through prayer. Some people do that through altruism or just trying to be good to others. Let's say you're not a churchgoer, okay? But you have it in your heart to donate food to the food bank or go, down there and give your time. Like, that's altruism. You're doing good for others, right? That's still part of your spiritual wellness and you staying on track, all right? So how do we keep ourselves into this wellness component? Well, we can do wellness challenges. What is it? A challenge for the day. So what's the purpose and what are you meeting it? Those are key. But how do you know if you're meeting it? Well, there has to be certain goals that you have to define to make sure that you are meeting that challenge. Like it says here, writing, implementing, and regularly updating a personal lifetime fitness and wellness program. That might be part of it. Also, again, I'm going to skip over this because we're just going to keep going through the book. But how do you enjoy good health? How do you maintain longevity are really the main qualities here. Everything must be personalized. I don't care who you are. You can't be doing the same thing as another person. You can do similar things, but they have to be done in the way that you do them. That's key. Also understanding that we have to be safe in all of our exercises and our physical activities. So if we need to, we might have to be involved with medical staffing for ourselves or for others to avoid having these abnormalities occur. So what do? We can do things like assessing heart rate. We can do blood pressure. A sphygmomanometer, that is a blood pressure cuff, another fancy word for that. So what are we looking for? In most people, or our heart rate, a lot of times you'll see it, it should be 80 to 100 or below 100. The lower the better, as long as it's not causing health complications. That just means you have a stronger heart. Talked about it before with other classes where, you know, look at marathon runners, they might have resting heart rates below 30. So basically what that's saying is like, yeah, their heart rate is so every time their heart beats, it's like every 2 seconds. Just imagine that in your head and be like, wow, that's pretty impressive that your heart only has to beat every 2 seconds, but it's strong. So that says a lot about how well you are or how fit you are. So there's your heart rate. Fair is considered 80, but really we would like to see, really it should be 60 or below would really be optimal, as long as medications are not causing problems with that. There's your diastolic and your systolic blood pressures. Systolic is your top number, diastolic is your bottom. Systolic is the point where if you're measuring that you hear the pulse, that's the contraction of your ventricles releasing blood to either the lungs or to the rest of the body. Diastolic is the relaxative phase, where the point of that blood pressure, if you're taking it, is diminishing. Okay? So that's key. So below 120 and below 80 is optimal. And then you can see there stage 1, stage 2 hypertensive. Hypertensive crises, 180, higher than 180, higher than 120. That's significant. And the main thing we have to understand too is that the closer that our pressures get together, the more likely that it is our heart can have complications with it. So, you got to, what I mean by that is if your systolic blood pressure is at 100 and your diastolic is 100 over 90, that means it's getting too close and you're not getting enough pressure to, force blood to where it's got to go. That can cause negative complications in your system. All right. So paying attention to all these factors is going to be very important. It's going to take us through the remainder of this book, but this is all really good baseline information to help us with wherever we're trying to get to. So let's take this and run with it and continue on throughout the remainder of the information. Again, principles of health and fitness, getting us to that baseline data, and let's get ready to rock and roll. Everybody have a great day.